Okay, so we are gathered here today. I'm Dr. Dan Kalish. I'm talking on behalf of Designs for Health, a company that I have known for I would say many years, my whole career, I think, 30 years. I've known Jonathan Lazard and his family and the company and worked with them in many capacities and go to all their yearly events, the CASI conference, which they put on, one of the better conferences of the year. I always look forward to it. Great people there, great speakers, uh, and can't say enough about their products. I've been using them in my practice for so long. It's sort of intuitively obvious to me how to use the brand and want to share that information with other people. And so today, specifically, we're going to talk about restoring lean muscle mass and all about sarcopenia, which is sort of, it seems maybe on the surface like a peripheral problem, but it's actually a central problem for a lot of the people that we work with, especially as the population is getting a little older. As we are all getting a little older, realize how important this is. So in terms of, well, I'll tell you, when I was listening to a talk by a colleague of mine, Dr. Jeffrey Moss, on sarcopenia a bunch of years ago, and he just made this offhand comment that sarcopenia is one of the most accurate markers for mortality, for whether the person's going to die or not and when they're going to die. And I was like, that's not possible. And so I started to look it up. I was like, whoa, Jeff is right. This is like a really serious thing. It's not just, flabby triceps that people are a little worried about. This is like a health problem. So it's something I've been curious about for a long time and thought I would share some information with you all about. So if you're brand new to these and haven't met me before, I'm Dan Kalish. I'm the founder of the Kalish Institute. We've trained thousands and thousands of docs on telehealth, functional medicine practices, do a lot of advanced and beginning lab interpretation stuff. I've done different kinds of research projects, including with the Mayo Clinic, working now quite actively with Dr. Richard Lord, one of the original developers of a lot of the lab testing that we use in functional medicine right now. Still in practice. I saw patients what felt like all day yesterday and all day today. It was only for 5 hours each day, but felt like all day. Anyway, still see patients a couple days a week, and I'm in the thick of this stuff from a practice perspective. I also teach a lot, and we have a couple of boot camps coming up at the Kalish Institute. You get a big discount, 20% off, if you're a Designs for Health customer. DFH21 is a discount code. And so the two classes are Lab Interpretation Boot Camp on cardiometabolic health. That's the first time I've taught that. Been working on that curriculum for a couple years. Should be pretty good. 2-3 years of work went into this. It's an 8-week course. It's very dense, lots of information, tons of lectures by Richard Lord on sort of beginning to advanced cardiometabolic concepts. And then I do the practical application parts of the class. And we'll have a series of live calls, 4 live calls, where we review cases that we're looking at in the curriculum, and should be really good if you're interested in learning more about cardiometabolic health. And then at the end of October, we have lab interpretation bootcamp on amino acids and B vitamins. So those are the 2 things that we're coming up with this year. And then next year, we're going to have a whole host of other classes if you guys are interested, okay? So for today, we want to look at stimulating muscle growth and stimulating mitochondrial population density, the numbers of mitochondria and the amount of muscle as a means of preventing or reversing muscle loss. So I thought it would be helpful to break it down to a few lab findings that you should for sure look at on every test and take it out of the realm of everything, because you really could be looking at everything for this problem. So leucine, glycine, collagen, that's proline, hydroxyproline, protein synthesis as a concept. That seems like enough. I mean, there's many other factors, obviously, but it seems like these are key, right? Leucine, glycine, collagen. We'll look at hydroxyproline and proline levels. Could even throw lysine in there if you want when we look at the labs. I'll show you some sample labs after we get through the lecture part. And then this big picture concept of stimulating protein synthesis, stimulating mitochondrial growth, and how we can do that. And in the biggest picture view, we're talking about the body either breaking down or building up proteins, right? Breaking down or building up proteins, and the balance here. And so sarcopenia gets right in the middle of all these different issues that we think about all the time in functional medicine, right? So for example, insulin resistance and mitochondrial dysfunction are going to play a role. Inflammation and dietary factors, anabolic hormones, versus catabolic hormones, right? So all these things are playing a role, and sarcopenia, or the loss of muscle mass, is sort of, and accompanying loss of mitochondria, are kind of right in the middle of that. And of course, if you think about loss of muscle mass and loss of mitochondria in the same sentence, then you start to think, whoa, wait a minute, there are not enough mitochondria present. That means ATP is down. That means the person might be depressed or tired or not even feel like engaging in exercise. And you think about all the cognitive effects that happen, right? And this came up in class yesterday. One of the doctors in class in the mentorship program yesterday sort of had this revelation, personal revelation, about how metabolic disorders lead to cognitive dysfunction, you know? And once you see that, you realize, whoa, this is just more, it's a whole lot more than about whether the person has an extra 10 pounds of lean muscle on them or not. It's about how they feel and how they move through the world and how they wake up and what they're like as human beings, right? This is a really central component. And if your muscles are wasting away, odds are you're not feeling like $1,000,000. Simple definition of sarcopenia from this article here, and you guys will get copies of the slides later. Um, Etiological factors, right, from the article defining sarcopenia: sedentary lifestyle, bed rest in older adults, loss of skeletal muscle mass and atrophy, inadequate food intake, malnutrition, we might say malabsorption, right, impaired skeletal muscle maintenance. Furthermore, mitochondrial dysfunction, insulin resistance, and inflammation are regarded as common linking factors associated with sarcopenia. Let me say that again. Mitochondrial dysfunction, check. Functional medicine can help with that. Insulin resistance, check. That's a hallmark of what we work with every patient. And inflammation, check, right? Mitochondrial function, insulin resistance, and inflammation are regarded as common linking factors associated with sarcopenia. So if we can get mitochondrial populations working better, insulin more balanced, and less inflammation, then we're going to have an improvement in sarcopenia. And of course, also support with hormones such as DHEA. And I use DHEA. I test every patient in my practice for DHEA levels and have done for over almost 30 years. Let's say I've tested pretty much every new patient for DHEA in the last 30 years. I don't know, honestly, 80 or 90% of them are low. Let's be conservative. Let's say 75% of them are low, and I give DHEA, and it's a miracle product, right? It's something that you should think about as part of this overall program that we're looking at, okay? DHEA assessment. And then in terms of nutritional supplementations and considerations for older adults, I thought this was interesting in the abstract right off the bat there, the first sentence, these docs are saying, sarcopenia is a progressive degenerative disorder affecting around 40% of adults over the age of 70. Okay, so it's not just an abstract thing that impacts a few people. Pretty important in almost half of the older population. So you're going to see this a lot. And then here's some more stats on how frequent it is, but more frequent than we would think, right? And as people are getting older worldwide, this is going to become a bigger and bigger and bigger problem. 53% those over age 80. Okay, now to take it right back to the practical, I think that, okay, there is a problem here. It affects a lot of people. What are we going to do about it? When we're looking at the lab markers, we want to think glycine, and I'll show you why glycine is important. Leucine, isoleucine, and valine, the branched chain amino acids, those are pretty obvious, right? Ones that are involved in muscle growth. Lysine is important as well. Proline, hydroxyproline, and then amino acids in general. So when you're looking at a lab, you're thinking, what's the glycine, leucine, isoleucine, valine, lysine, proline, hydroxyproline, and the amino acids in general look like? And if any one of these are not where they should be, then you're going to have a lab-based way to intervene. And I think one of the biggest picture concepts I try to convey to patients is that there's two ways that we can use nutrients. We can test you and see you're low in glycine and give you glycine and restore your glycine levels. We can check your amino acids in general, and if they're low, give you amino acids to restore them. That's replacing a nutritional deficiency, and it's miraculous in what that leads to in terms of people feeling better. However, even if your amino acid levels are normal, we can still use amino acids to stimulate muscle growth, and I'll show you some information on that in a minute. We can still use amino acids to stimulate mTOR and to get mitochondrial populations to increase, regardless of whether the amino acid levels are low or not. So you can use an amino acid formula in two different ways. You can use it to replace missing amino acids, and you can use it for a physiological effect in a person that's got normal amino acids. And I'll show you some of the products, specific products that we use too in a minute, okay? Let's see here. But first, a little introduction to this idea. The supplements we're talking about, amino acid supreme, and then usually you should give B supreme with it. Okay, 1 capsule of B supreme a day. Amino acid supreme, the dosages are going to vary depending on what your intended effect is. I'll show you that in a sec. So these amino acids then, 20 of them are required for protein synthesis. Which proteins? That's all proteins in the human body, right? All proteins in the human body. And so except for collagen. Collagen's a little different. We'll look at that. But all proteins except for collagen require these 20 amino acids. And so individual amino acids do remarkable things. The favorite one, easy one to talk about always is tryptophan. So when I say tryptophan, you think serotonin. When I say tryptophan, you think brain chemistry. But tryptophan is a rate limiting step in the synthesis of all proteins in the body, all proteins, not just a contributor to the production of serotonin. Okay, so we think of these amino acids in like a niche-y, specific way, but when you're working with someone who has a PhD in proteomics, like Dr. Lord, and I've been working with him twice a week for 6 years now, so I know a lot about proteomics, and more than it was almost like it's been like being in graduate school. When you think, I started to think like this guy, right? Which is that, and he tricked me on this for years. He would say, okay, Dan, that patient looks like they're low in tryptophan. What do you think that's affecting? And for so many years, I would go to serotonin. But now I'll say, with a little hesitation, I'll say, I think that patient is not making proteins. And he'll say, which proteins? And I'll say, all proteins. And he'll say, good, you got it. That took me a couple of years to unlearn the tryptophan makes serotonin thing. Of course, tryptophan makes serotonin. We're not denying that. But tryptophan has a more important role in what? In the synthesis of all proteins, which is what we're talking about now, right? We're talking about, can your patient make things or not? Can your patient make muscle tissue? Can your patient make mitochondria? In order to make these things, you got to have all 20 amino acids, every single one, okay? And the collagen's an exception, but we'll look at that. And here they are. Alanine, glycine, isoleucine, tyrosine is required to make every protein in the body. So is methionine. So are some of the obscure ones that you never really think about, like who thinks about asparagine? Nobody ever thinks about asparagine. They named it after asparagus, clearly not like something that you're thinking about all the time. You don't wake up and think about asparagus and asparagine, right? So, and some of these are super important. You think about every day probably. You probably think about glutamine all the time, you know, when you're working with patients. But anyways, you need all 20 of these to make proteins, and there's no way around that. And then here's the basics of how this works, right? Is that we take these strings of amino acids and we kind of link them together. And the proteins range in size from 50 amino acids to the largest known protein has 30,000 amino acids in it. Like I read that, I couldn't believe that. Such a trip. Your body is so strange. But a lot of the proteins that we're dealing with, these enzymes and stuff, they have a couple hundred, you know, amino acids strung together, not thousands. Thousands is a lot. Key point is that we need all 20 amino acids to make a protein. So we string these amino acids together, yeah, and then because of the way that the amino acids themselves are structured, because of their charges and where their little groups are, they start to fold themselves into the structure that they're eventually going to make. Okay, I want to just show you real quick another way that we can think about this, all right? So one way is with protein synthesis. So you're giving amino acids so the person can make things. And if you do a lab test and the person is low in amino acids, giving amino acids is often a life-changing event, okay? But we can also use amino acids. Let me get rid of this thing here, sorry. We can also use amino acids to stimulate mTOR. There's a nice article on it right here. Strangely titled Dynamics of mTOR C1 Activation in Response to Amino Acids. And what the science folks have learned is that if we give enough amino acids at one time, it takes about 8 to 10 grams of powdered amino acids all at one time, you'll stimulate the production of mTOR. And that in turn will stimulate the production of mitochondria, okay? And so this doesn't have to be a super complicated thing. And I'll show you exactly what I do, so there's no mystery to any of this right now. So I got this all set up here. Let me see how I have to change my format for a second here. I wanted to try to make this as practical as possible so you guys can just do this right now. So if you have a patient and you run some labs and you suspect that their mitochondrial populations are low, things are not working that well, then you can just jet right over to Amino Acid Supreme, okay? Get them to buy a bottle of this powder. And you want to dose them in the 8 to 10 milligrams per dose range. And simply enough, the way that the scoopers are set up in this particular product is one scoop is 12 grams. So if you just tell them, you want to keep it simple, tell them use one scoop either once or twice a day on an empty stomach. That's going to stimulate mTOR and start to get mitochondrial populations to come back. It's really that simple. You want to also have some B vitamins in the picture and a multivitamin, okay? And this will happen starting within, days or weeks of when you start the treatment. Okay, so that's a really simple treatment. It's highly effective. At the end of the class, we can look at some labs and you can see exactly how the lab part of that works, right? Okay, let's go back to our thing here. And I use that literally every day in practice, literally every day. And because you'll see this on the labs a lot. All right, so that's product number one, and you should be comfortable using it. It doesn't have a lot of negative side effects. Some people don't like the taste. That's probably the biggest complaint I get about it. And in fact, if you do this properly and you get that dose at like one scoop on empty stomach twice a day, you're going to stimulate mTOR and you're going to get the production of mitochondria to come back, assuming that based on the labs, you see that the person is low, has poor mitochondrial function. Okay, again, mTOR leads to muscle protein synthesis. Stimulation with amino acids. And that, sorry, I forgot. Hang on a second. Getting ahead of myself. I'm a little too excited, sorry. Hang on a second. Oh, now my computer's like freaking out too. Okay, the whole point of this slide is that leucine is part of this pathway too. See the leucine there with the red thing? So you can take a look at the study later if you want to. But leucine is an important part of this, okay? Leucine is an important part of this. And you'll see the punchline on that in a minute. Because that's already in these products. Believe me, the scientists that design these products have this, they're just way ahead of us. So we also want to think about these other supplements, which would be MyoStim, that has the leucine in it and it has collagen in it. Okay, so you don't have to worry about extra leucine in a separate bottle. The leucine's in there already. And then glycine powder is also something that you should be familiar with. Okay, because you're going to see these glycine markers low on labs quite often. So now here's a trip. This is just a funny and strange thing, I think, is that we have collagen, right, which is part of this whole thing, and we want to make sure collagen has its integrity and is strong and healthy, and that as you're building muscle and you're getting this person out of this sarcopenic state, that you're also making sure that their soft tissues are super strong, right? Because if they're going to exercise and work out, and it doesn't matter if they're 37 or 77 or 97 years old, you've got to make sure that the soft tissues are strong so they can, put on muscle mass and have the ability to work out and move around and not just trip and fall and break their hip or something, right? And so part of this is to restore collagen. And collagen is a strange one. All the proteins in the body that we mentioned, right? Every single protein in the body, except for collagen, is made up of these 20 amino acids. Collagen is strange. It has these chains here, okay? And it's a whole different mechanism. And there's a lot of collagen in the body, by the way, huge amounts, right? And you can see that it's got this a thing, and this a thing, and then glycine, right? And hydroxyproline and proline, and then glycine, and then hydroxyproline and proline, and then glycine. You get it? So like every third structure there is glycine. So in addition to the hydroxyproline and proline, you need to have glycine, okay, in order to make collagen. And so if your patient tests low in glycine, it's going to be hard for this whole thing to come together. If you give them glycine, it will allow them quite rapidly to start to get their collagen levels back on track. So this is the lab-based thing. Not everybody is low in glycine, but if they are low in glycine, you got to think, wait a minute, that's the weird one. Glycine is one of the 20 amino acids from which we make all proteins, but it's also the one that's super important in Collagen, because it's 1/3 of collagen, right? And there's a lot of collagen in the body. In fact, I have a whole slide on that. Fibrous protein collagen is the most abundant protein in mammals. Check this out, making 25 to 35% of the whole body protein content. That's crazy. It's like 1/3 of your body. Okay, so if you're low in glycine, 1/3 of your body right off the bat is screwed up. Talk about fibromyalgia. Talk about blowing out joints and hurting yourself when you exercise. Talk about chronic musculoskeletal pain and not being able to recover from injuries. 20 to 35% of your body is made of this stuff. And if your glycine levels are low, your collagen formation is going to be weak. So low glycine is like DEFCON 10 level importance for what we're talking about. Okay, glycine is important. Found in almost every third residual, right? I just showed you that residue, every third proline makes up about 17% of it. Collagen contains these other amino acids. These don't matter so much. But the point is that we're going to measure this stuff. I'll show you on the labs. You can measure hydroxyproline and proline. You can measure lysine, which is important here, and you can measure glycine. Okay, all this is on the test. So you don't have to guess. As Dr. Timmons used to say, you should test, not guess. That was his favorite one-liner. You should test, not guess. I was like, okay. Now, I put this study in just because I think the title is funny, because I love the word multifarious. It's like nefarious, but it's not. It's like a science term, but it sounds kind of like a suspicious term. Anyways, multifarious beneficial effects of amino acid glycine. Someone actually wrote a paper on this. How cool is that? Glycine is a very vital role in metabolism and nutrition. Of the total amino acid content in the body, 11.5% is glycine. Okay, that's a lot, a whole lot. 80% of body glycine is used for protein synthesis. And then we say this for the third time. In collagen, glycine is located at every third position. Glycine residues bring together the triple helix of the collagen. The flexibility of active sites in enzymes is provided by glycine. Glycine is important. Oh, okay, wait a minute. How did we get to here already? Sorry, hang on a second. So now I'm going to cut over here for a second, and I want to show you guys. I have a whole bunch of sample labs that I pulled up, and let's look at those, and you'll be able to see exactly what we're talking about, and the products also. So we talked also already about amino acid supreme. If you're trying to stimulate mitochondrial growth, 1 scoop on an empty stomach twice a day, along with some B vitamins. Usually the B vitamins are taken with food. The amino acids are done on an empty stomach. That huge amount of amino acids all of a sudden hitting the bloodstream stimulates mTOR. And remember, mTOR starts to lead to stimulation of muscle to grow. Okay. Another way that you can approach this, and oftentimes we do several of these things at the same time, obviously it's not just like one or then the other, is this product MyoStim. And again, this was thought through for quite some time by somebody with a brain that is quite large. And obviously the title, MyoStim, stimulating muscle. And it's kind of a we thought of everything product, right? And so in it, you've got some of the cofactors, right? But you've got a ton of the actual collagen. You've got the leucine, some magnesium, creatinine, et cetera. You've got the transgeranol, geranol. So there's a bunch of kind of extra special things in here. The idea being it's like a one-size-fits-all combination product to get stimulation of muscles, right? And it's covering all the collagen things that we're talking about. And again, here you go, again, collagen, the most abundant protein in the human body, 30% of total body mass. Okay, so these things are really important. And this product you can use even without labs. If you're a non-lab testing kind of person, this is really designed for you. You don't have to get super specific. It's everything all in one product. That's it. You know, it's that simple. Okay. And some of you may not be interested in doing the labs, or you don't always want to do the labs, or maybe you have a patient that can't afford the labs because they're on Medicare and they just don't have the money. So this is a product that you could use just off the shelf, off the cuff, without any lab testing. Now, if you're doing labs also, then of course you could use this as well and be more targeted. Take this product, right? A scoop of this product, and then add to it the things that show up on the lab. And that's what I spend a lot of my day doing these days is I'll find, okay, you got sarcopenia. We want to get you to be stronger, healthier, fitter person. So we're going to use the MyoStim powder, right? And then we're going to add to that which is a generic, like it's going to make your muscle grow. You don't need a lab test product. We're going to add to that what we see on the test, the leucine or the glycine or the this or the that, okay? So that's another really effective way that you can go here. And then I just want to show you this because we have a lab that's going to show you, sometimes this pops up as a need as well, where maybe they don't need every amino acid under the sun. Maybe they just need the branched chain amino acids, and you're trying to stimulate muscle growth. And you're like, okay, well, not all the amino acids are low. It's just the amino acids related to the branched chains, And so why don't we just use the BCAA powder? And I'll use this frequently too. Again, this would be either non-lab based or lab based, because non-lab based, this is going to enhance muscle growth. Lab based, sometimes you see all those amino acids under the branched chains low, rather than giving separate ones or giving the total amino acids. This can be a more specific and targeted thing for certain patients. So again, this could be used in a non-lab based way or based on labs, either way. And then, if that's not all, I'm going to show you one or two other things. And this is a product that I personally use. I mean, I use it every day, but off and on, to be honest. Not every day, like day in and day out. But, I probably go through, I don't know, this past year, I probably used this product 75% of the days when I wake up. Right now, I'm doing this intermittent fasting thing, so I'm not having my smoothie in the morning. But in the time when I was doing my smoothies, this is what I did every morning. Way cool. First of all, I think it tastes great. Second of all, it's like glutathione booster to end all glutathione boosters. And then I love the fact that it's these pasture-raised cows from New Zealand that they get this stuff from. I've been to New Zealand several times. I love New Zealand. And just the thought that I'm getting these cows that graze on pesticide-free, non-GMO grass in New Zealand just like makes it extra cool. It's not any more expensive than really poor quality whey proteins, So why not use the really good stuff? It tastes great too. And I'll dump it in some hemp milk with frozen berries or fresh berries if we have them and the kids didn't eat them yet. And then whoosh, that's my smoothie. It's basically my breakfast every day, unless I'm doing the intermittent fasting thing. And I love it. It's a great way to start the day. It's like a milkshake basically, but it's like really good for you. Okay, and now you can use it. I mean, that's just my fun thing I do every morning. You can use this obviously for patients where you're trying to get more muscle synthesis going. Whey cool can be, if they tolerate whey well, then this can be a great alternative too, okay? Especially if the person's already doing a smoothie in the morning and you just wanna cram in some extra amino acids in their system, right? That's another good one. And then one last product before we look at the labs. And this is the, sorry, hang on a second. That didn't format very well, did it, Han? I can't make this work. Sorry. Well, you can see the title of it here. Crealkaline Pro, okay, and that's a creatine. Okay, that's another product that you can use as well. All right, so let's look at some labs. Because to my mind, this all comes down to testing and how you can apply this to labs. So now, these are things, by the way, we have someone on the call named Front Desk, which I think is kind of funny. Hi, Front Desk. Oh, and we'll have time for questions at the end too, okay? All right, and we'll answer, yeah, I'll answer questions. Let me get through some of the labs first. So here, let me find some example labs. Here we go. So now you can do this in a non-lab based way, but why deprive yourself of the fun of doing labs? Patient motivation skyrockets with labs. Okay, they have to spend some money up front to order a test, but compliance is so much better. Adherence to programs is improved. You get better results. I mean, if you're not into labs, that's great. I'm trying to give you some non-lab based solutions too, because every single product I just talked about, you can order without labs. But I don't know, I just find I would be bored to death just telling people to take that stuff. I mean, it works really well, but then where's the fun in it for you? So right off the bat on this test, this is an ion panel from Genova, similar to a Nutraval test. Most of you have probably ordered these in the past or something similar. You can see right off the bat, lysine levels are low. Lysine being low, big problem. Okay, not going to build muscle very well. Got to give lysine. And then we're going to look at the glycine. Remember we talked about glycine. Why is that important? Because a third of collagen is glycine, right? It's 1 out of every 3 of those residue position things is glycine. And remember, collagen's a third of your physical body. So as you're walking around, sitting around, watching Netflix, going for a run, a third of the stuff you're moving through space, your body, a third of it is collagen. That's a lot. So imagine that's a lot of glycine. If glycine is low, your collagen is screwed, right? It's just not going to work right. So you can give collagen, and you should give collagen to people who have this problem, but you better give them glycine too. And that's why I was saying you can take the collagen powder that Designs for Health has, that I just showed you, right? And you can dump into it the myostim. You take the myostim and you dump into it a half a teaspoon of glycine twice a day. Now you got like a personalized, individually based, super special turbocharged powder for this person to build muscle. It's not just the myostim, but you did the lab and you had them dump in the glycine. So now when they drink that drink, they're thinking, this is a customized, extra special thing that's just for me based on my lab. Dr. Kalish is going to retest me in 6 months. I better drink this stuff every day because he's going to retest. And nobody wants to be embarrassed on a retest by having the levels look bad. And I'll get on the phone and I'll say, okay, well, what happened here, Jane? Your glycine is still low. And she's like, well, I never took this stuff. I mean, nobody does that, right? So this ensures compliance, ensures that people are going to take the program and get better. I know it's just a little psychology here. You could probably just give everybody glycine in the powder, myostim as well, but it just works better if you do the testing, a lot better. And it's more fun and entertaining for you. So also on this lab, you'll see there's a whole section down here. And this is not exactly rocket science. They actually isolated this under the subheading, collagen-related amino acids. How easy is that? Proline, hydroxyproline, lysine, hydroxylysine. Simple. Lysine is low. Give lysine. Okay. Proline is low. Give proline. Or use the powder. Use myostim with some extra lysine in it. That'll do it, right? That would be the prescription for this person. It would be myostim plus extra lysine, 3 grams or more of lysine, and extra glycine, 3 or more grams of glycine. They've got their customized powder. They chug that stuff down once or twice a day, and voila, they start to feel better. Okay. Now, just out of curiosity, let's go and look at the branched chain amino acids. And you can see the branched chain amino acids at the top here. Isoleucine, leucine, and valine are all normal. So you don't need to give extra specific branched chain amino acids to this person. The fixed powders, the custom, the combination powders that have been designed by Designs for Health are going to be adequate. All right. And let's look at another one. This is what they call personalized nutrition. This is what everybody wants. People don't want generic off-the-shelf stuff. Nobody wants, what everyone else is getting. People want something special that's all about them, which is good. So now, different lab, different person. These are all from my practice. This is just from a few months ago, from March. Now, lysine is fine. That's good. But the branched chain amino acids are all doing poorly. So one would think we should use the branched chain amino acids. And here it is, right? All in this powder, right? BCAA powder. Give them a scoop of that twice a day. End of problem for the branched chain aminos. And that's going to allow them then, obviously, to start to build muscle, because that's one of the primary roles of the branched chain aminos. Now, in case this person, let's say that this patient of yours, has chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia, and they're depressed also. Will the branched chain amino acids help make hemoglobin, make thyroid hormones, make neurotransmitters, make everything? Yeah, because remember, the branched chain amino acids are we think about them specifically in terms of muscle growth, but they're 3 of the 20 amino acids that are required for protein synthesis. Which proteins? All proteins. So giving branched chain amino acids improves production of everything that's a protein in the body, right? Except for collagen, which we already said is special. Okay, now this person's also, now the glycine levels are normal, so they don't need any extra glycine. Well, that's great. That's one less thing to worry about. And then we can go to our little secret special spot that we now know in this particular lab, right? and we're kind of scrolling through some pretty tough territory here we don't want to talk about because that's not part of today's talk, like the brain and other stuff. Sulfur amino acids, we're not talking about that. Kind of hard to not talk about sulfur amino acids, isn't it? Especially in the era of COVID, but stay focused here on sarcopenia. And we are finally getting to this special section, collagen-related amino acids. Proline is low, hydroxyproline is fine, lysine is fine, and hydroxylysine is fine. So this person needs some more proline. You could simply give the myostim, it's got the collagen stuff in it. You don't have to give proline as a separate product. And then in this person's case, you could give the myostim with some extra branched chain amino acids. A scoop of myostim, a scoop of the BCAA powder, take that on an empty stomach twice a day, take your multivitamin and some B vitamins, and come back in 2 weeks, and let's get you in the gym as soon as you can, you know? It is amazing how well this works. We have time for maybe one more. All right. Wait, is that the same one? No, it's not. Well, it's a different one, but it looks the same. It's kind of interesting for me because when I have patients all day Tuesday and Wednesday, all day I'm complaining about it's 5 hours. I had 5 hours of patients yesterday and 5 hours of patients today. But it's not very often that you sit down and look at ion panel after ion panel, you know? That's like, I don't really have time to do that. But it's kind of interesting to just teach this class and pull out, these are all recent labs of patients of mine. And look how many of them are screwed up in the same way. So this one now has lysine deficiency. Remember, lysine is one of the collagen-related amino acids. And we have a doctor in the class, in the mentorship class, and he's a really famous case because I talk to him all the time, every week, right? And he had a lysine deficiency for years that he didn't know about and was always complaining about going to the gym. He would work out, it wouldn't really work. He couldn't get in a long workout. As soon as we got him on lysine, he's in the gym, he's working out hard, he's feeling strong, putting on muscle mass. I mean, it was like a switch, poof. So you don't have to be chronically ill and all messed up for this stuff to help. You could just be like a doctor that goes to the gym but never seems to get muscle growth. And then shoo, you take some lysine and it starts to happen. Okay, now this patient also needs the branched chain amino acids, right? But you know now that's all in that powder, so you could do that. They also need glycine, so now you got to add glycine. Now you can see why the powders are handy, because if you're doing this with pills, it would be so many pills, it'd be ridiculous. Right? And then we're going to look down here at the collagen-related amino acids. So proline is low, hydroxyproline is fine, lysine is low. So myostim would take care of the proline. You could dump in a little extra lysine if you wanted to the drink, right? Maybe an extra 2 or 3 grams of lysine if you really want to pump them up. And then the branched chain amino acid powder. Twice a day on an empty stomach, B vitamin with meals, maybe give them, twice daily essential packs so they get all the minerals and everything. And you got a sarcopenia program cranking away really well, right? And I just want to kind of demystify this stuff, so hopefully it doesn't seem like it's impossible or that hard to do. Quick reminder, then we'll look at labs. And I'll have a sip of my juice here. This is my latest addiction, which is like organic grapefruit juice with like sparkling water. Okay, let's see. September, lab interpretation boot camp. Last couple of years of my life have gone into developing the content for this. It should be pretty good. It's 8 weeks long, but it's a ridiculous amount of content. So if you join it, just be prepared to spend some time, on it. It's a fair amount of time. Short though, only 8 weeks and you're done. You have access to the recordings for a year though, so you can go back through it and review it over and over again. Richard Lord speaks quite a bit on that one. Richard Lord also speaks quite a bit on the amino acids boot camp. You get a big fat 20% discount for being a Designs for Health customer, DFH21, if you want to join in September for the cardiometabolic boot camp or in October for the amino acid boot camp. Those are the 2 things we have to close out the year. All right, and then let's look at questions. Okay, let me grab questions. I'm just going to go back up to the beginning where the question started and see what we can get through. We got some time. A few patients get dizzy when I give DHEA. I've never had that happen. If that's something that's happening consistently, I would probably What would I do? I would probably use a little liver support and then try it again and see, because that's not a very common reaction that I've seen. Um, what are the most common amino acid deficiencies that you see? Well, I should know that, right? Let's think. Well, see, I'm all thinking about glycine now, but let's think. I'm going through the test in order. Sulfur-containing amino acids for sure. Cysteine. I see cysteine, glutamine, and glycine all the time. The three that help you make glutathione. Those are low all the time. I think as environmental toxin exposure, most of our patients are just trash their glutathione levels. I see, probably tyrosine is the one that I see the most. In addition, so it would be glutamine, glycine, and cysteine, which are the three that make up glutathione, and tyrosine. I'll probably put those four in the top out of the 20. Let's see. I don't know much about elderly patients with compromised renal function. So that's something that you'd have to, I would defer to another person to answer that kind of question. Um, So the type of collagen matter, I mean, a lot of people use bone broth. I mean, I think there's a lot of different ways to do this. I just like to use supplements because I find, I don't know, I just like to use supplements. I guess it's kind of my personal thing. Um, are there ways to address sarcopenia that do not increase mTOR? Yeah, absolutely. The only way that we talked about to increase mTOR today is a single large dose of amino acids. If you give a small dose, like say 5 grams a day of the amino acids, or use any of the other products besides the amino acid supreme, you're not going to be stimulating mTOR. So only that one thing I said is a way to stimulate mTOR. It has to be purposefully this large dose. You can just give a smaller dose, just cut the dose in half and you won't have that problem. Where would you start with a sarcopenic patient, amino acid supreme or myostim? Probably the myostim first, if you didn't have any labs, I think that's the safest way to go. If the client hates powders, then you're gonna have to just kind of tell them to suck it up, and see if they can do the powders. And you could do myostim in the morning and amino acid supreme at night. You could do one each day of, each. Be careful of doing too many things without labs though, because, or, one way that you can get around that is I would say, if you have a patient and they don't want to do the labs or can't afford the labs or something like that's happening, you can say, hey, let's try this program. It's non-lab based, best quality products on the market. Let's give it 3 or 4 months, and if we're not getting a clinical response, then we can come back and do the labs. That's a reasonable way to get yourself out of a bind, because you don't want people to think that you don't know what you're doing because it didn't work, right? Um, so anyone who has a lack of bone growth and whatnot, they for sure need to do the lab testing, because I wouldn't want to guess about that. And absolutely, you can improve bone growth. They might even just be low in something like calcium or magnesium, right? Or vitamin D, or the essential fatty acids, all of which are required for healthy bones. So if someone was having trouble with bones knitting together, I wouldn't just guess about things. I would do the labs. A vascular section of the ion, yeah, that's we're going to cover in the boot camp, in the metabolic health boot camp. Do they stop taking amino acids before testing? So when you're retesting someone, or if you're doing a baseline test and they've been on supplements for a while, I generally ask people to stop all their supplements for at least 3 days prior to the test. Medications, of course, they continue on with. They do not stop antidepressants. They do not stop their thyroid medication. They do not stop their statin or blood pressure medication. But for supplements, non-prescription stuff, especially the things that you're going to measure, like amino acids and fatty acids, it's usually best if they stop those 3 days, maybe up to a week before they do the test, so you get a nice clear baseline on the test, okay? Would weight loss resistance be related to amino acid deficiency? Well, oh man, that's a really good question. So let's just look at that. Think about it this way. Weight loss resistance and a lack of lean muscle is the same thing, right? In other words, if a person has really good quality, adequate, let's say robust muscle tissue throughout their entire body, that muscle tissue can absorb glucose hits consistently, right? And if the person has very little muscle mass and their diet's even a little bit off, they're never going to burn body fat, right? So muscle is like the I don't know what this like the stabilizer or the arbitrator or the like the controller of how our metabolism is going to run. And if you're low in muscle mass, by definition, your metabolism is just going to be a disaster, right? And if you're fit and have a lot of muscle mass, you can have a fairly high number of dietary indiscretions and get away with it much easier than a person with low muscle mass would, you know? And so, um, I mean, you can have a lot of muscle mass and be very unhealthy. And obviously, there's a lot of professional athletes that are like that, right? They eat horribly and they're really stressed and they're traveling all the time, but they're really physically fit. But when I look at patients who have great muscle tone and great muscle mass and eat poorly, they are far healthier from what I can tell on the labs than patients who eat perfectly and have really poor muscle mass and don't work out at all. You know, so if I, and obviously it's not an either or situation, but if I had a choice and a patient said, I could either get in really good physical shape and have great muscle tone and great cardiovascular health, or I could eat really well. I mean, what's better for me? I mean, no one's ever asked me that. It's a silly question, but the, I mean, the way I think about it is that diet is the most important factor in our overall health, except if you don't have the muscle tone to back up the diet, then super healthy eating without the muscle tone is not going to get you the results that you're trying to get, right? And so the answer really for that question is that weight loss resistance means that your body's not burning fat very appropriately, right? And that almost by definition means that the not necessarily that the amino acids are out of balance, but that there's not enough muscle mass to make the whole equation work. Okay. All right, let's see if I got all the questions or not. I think I did. If any other last minute questions, let me see. Uh, oh wait, hang on. There's a bunch more I missed here. Oh, how might you use these products post-surgery? Yeah, so I've done a lot of that before. You know, you can really help people a lot after their surgeries. So I would run the tests, you know, before the surgery, hopefully. And then usually when they're going in for an operation, you don't want them on any supplements. It just confuses everybody. So they take a break from the supplements, they get this procedure done. And then, for example, if they're low in glycine, as soon as the surgery's over, you put them on glycine. If they're low in the branch chains, you put them on those. If they're low in collagen, you put them on the collagen product. If they're low in vitamin C, we didn't talk a lot about vitamin C, but vitamin C is obviously critical for making collagen. And you see there's a vitamin C marker on this test. If the vitamin C marker is off, then you put them on vitamin C. And you would create a personalized, you know, post-surgical recovery program with the nutrients that they're primarily low in, you know, in an extra special dose so that they can get quick repair. And when my mother went through, she crashed her car, this is a long time ago, it's like 10 years ago. She crashed her car and or someone crashed into her on the freeway and she fractured, you know, a couple of vertebrae in her spine and she had a pretty bad injury there. And we were just like, put her on all the right supplements. And even though, like, see, at the time she was probably in her mid 70s, the orthopedic people at the hospital were like, whoa, lady, what are you doing? Like, how come you're walking around so quickly, you know? So this really does work. You know, I've done this with patients and done it with family members for a long time. Post-surgical, it's a really great way to go to be able to help people reduce inflammation and get these things figured out. Um, Let's see, if labs improve after supplements given, can you decrease or reduce supplements? So I always tell patients, the better I do my job, the fewer products you take and the faster we get you off all these things. So if you have someone that has, you know, low muscle mass and low fatty acids and low branched chain amino acids and low glycine, you get the nutritional issues resolved, you get them in the gym and working out, and you get their diet dialed in, you do a second test, and you start to gradually reduce the supplements. I would say on average in my practice, if I'm doing my job well, when we retest around the 6-month mark, usually 50 to 80% of the problems they had in their first labs are gone. So 50 to 80% of the supplements go away, right? And we start to get more focused on lifestyle as time goes on. So if someone's on, if anyone has cancer or is going through cancer treatment or has a history of cancer, then you don't want to stimulate mTOR, right? Because mTOR leads to growth and would be the opposite of what you want to do for a cancer patient. So again, the only thing that we talked about today that stimulates mTOR is if you give a single dose of free-form amino acids at 8 to 10 grams or more all at one time. If you use amino acids, let's say a half a scoop of the Designs for Health product, a half a scoop, it won't have a problem. It's the larger amounts that can stimulate mTOR. Okay. So then if the patient has amino acid deficiencies, does it mean they're not getting enough through their diet? It's relatively rare to see a lack of protein in the diet, at least with the patients that I work with, but we more often see a lack of hydrochloric acid, so they're not absorbing protein, or various gut infections, so they're not absorbing protein, or the killer of them all, H. pylori infection, that leads to amino acid deficiencies frequently. So we always want to fix the gut as a way to reduce the amino acid imbalances, right? And that's why usually after 6 months, most of these things can stop, because if you found the underlying root cause for the amino acid imbalances, then you can fix the problem, right? There are some large exceptions to that. There are some people who just, for example, don't make tyrosine very well, and they can't get enough tyrosine from their diet. So those people need more long-term tyrosine supplementation. Long-term might be, I don't know, a year or two. And then I'll usually tell people, hey, you're feeling better, your thyroid's working well now. Why don't we just call it a day with the tyrosine? Pick up a bottle, keep an extra bottle around the house. You get really stressed, that's heavy, take it again, and let's redo your labs in a year and see where things are at. And you can either go one of two ways then. You may find some very small number of products that the patient has at the end of all this testing and treatment that they just need to take based on their genes, and that's their personalized supplement program. It's some tyrosine, a B vitamin, and some omega-6 fatty acids. Their body just doesn't make those very well, and so they take them, as a consistent maintenance program. But it shouldn't be more than a very small number of products, that they need long term in general. Okay. Is the amino acid ion test included in the boot camps? I mean, we study the test, but you don't get the actual lab kit, right? So, but the test itself, the class itself is based around either ion panels or NutriVals, depending on what you're looking at. And but we don't actually have test kits that we give out. Let's see. I think I'm missing a few. Oh, when's the best time to take amino acids? That's from Barbara. So you can do them in a variety of different ways. If you take them before exercise, it can energize a person and make the workouts more pleasurable. If you take them after exercise, I think the rule of thumb is, within 10 to 20 minutes of working out, closer to 10 if you can, then it can be sort of a booster repair type product. If you have really long workouts, like when my son was on a crew team in high school and they would have these 5-hour workouts, it was just insane. We would have a pre-workout drink. This is a little crazy, but whatever. He was in high school and I was having fun with it, and he was in really good shape. Pre-workout drink, post-workout drink, and then something to sip on while he was working out for 5 hours on Saturdays. That's a little extreme. Most people pick a lane. And picking a lane meaning they either do a pre-workout or post-workout drink. That's more common. And I usually, if patients are wondering, I usually say just try it either way and see which way you like more. Some people like the recovery drink more. Some people like it more if they use it as a way to get themselves, kind of energized before the workout. Yeah, and I would say if the labs are not improving, then something's seriously wrong that you missed. So we should always be able to taper the patient off of supplements as they get healthier. That's really the goal. Okay. Let's see. I think I got through all the questions, you guys. Oh wait, no, a few more. So is it possible, excuse me, is it possible to do the metabolomics blood spot amino acid to assess amino acid levels if they don't want to do a blood draw? Yes, you can absolutely do that. You can absolutely do that. All right, gang, I'm going to wrap it up for today. Thank you all for showing up. And if you're interested in the boot camps, you can reach out to the office and Jennifer can give you a little chat about what they're all about. Otherwise, I will see you at the next one of these. Okay, take care. And thanks again for Designs for Health for sponsoring all this. Bye for now.